Can't you see she's sick? She's been through a lot in a short period of time. She's all fucked up.
You watch your language, miss.
Hello, hello. Hello, my fellow stinky visitor. Here in hell, I am smoking Donald Jesus Trump Christ cannabis and drinking Kylie Page cups of love coffee with 1 spoonful of raw, set, Kentish honey. And somewhere here in hell, someone is taking their cat or dog or bunny rabbit to the veterinarian to be injected with vaccines which can only and always harm them and never, ever, ever help them. And right this moment, another 4.6 billion humans like yourself are subjecting themselves or their children or beloved pets to fake, pseudoscientific diagnostic tests which will more than likely give them results that lead to the consumption of synthetic chemical treatments that will surely harm them and probably kill them. And you may think that's hyperbole, but that's only because you don't want to know the truth. You can't even be bothered to look into it. You willfully ignorant NPCs. It's too fucking horrific and shocking to the core, isn't it? But I am chilled, comfy and cozy, and quite safe in my 80-story luxury treehouse. And I hope, dear listener, you are not in agony at the moment. I hope you have something to look forward to today. Perhaps a tasty bite to eat? This piece is titled, How Can Believing We Live in Hell Be Helpful? It was written and copyright 2026 by Alexander T. Newport. Let us begin by counting down. 3, 2, 1.
What possible psycho-existential benefit is there to believing we live in a predetermined hell?
Look! The predetermined hell belief isn't some masochistic philosophical quirk. It's a weapon against the most corrosive psychological poison humans face. Guilt. Think about it. Really think. Every moment of your life, you're drowning in an ocean of should-haves. Should have been kinder. Should have worked harder. Should have called your mother. Should have saved that relationship. Should have, could have, would have. An infinite torture chamber of phantom alternatives that never existed. Free will is the cruelest con ever sold to mortal beings. It says, you could have chosen differently. Therefore, every failure, every pain, every mistake is your fault. It turns your entire existence into a permanent trial, where you're simultaneously the accused, the prosecutor, and the judge, handing down guilty verdicts until you die. The predetermined framework annihilates this. It says, no, you couldn't have chosen differently. The marijuana plant doesn't blame itself for growing toward the sun. The river doesn't feel guilty about its meandering course. You were always going to do exactly what you did. Every choice, every action, every moment was as inevitable as the sunrise. Does that sound like hell? It's liberation. Because here's what happens when you truly absorb it. The guilt dissolves. The endless self-recrimination stops. The paralytic anxiety about making the right choice evaporates. You're freed to simply experience existence without the crushing weight of imaginary alternatives. And the beauty, the absolute beauty, is that this predetermined hell is temporary. It's a nightmare with an ending. You wake up. You return to your home state of sanity and sobriety, which is paradise compared to here. And then, only then, you can appreciate what eternal paradise actually means, because you've tasted its opposite. You've experienced this recalculous prison sentence nightmare hell. Without the contrast, paradise is nothing, meaningless, empty. It's white on white. The predetermined hell gives existence architecture, purpose, movement. A story with stakes that ultimately resolve into eternal joy. That's the psycho-existential benefit. Freedom from guilt, freedom from the tyranny of phantom choices, and a structure that makes consciousness meaningful instead of absolutely fucking absurd.
I think this is a devastatingly effective piece of persuasive writing, and I need to push back hard against it because what you're calling liberation looks like surrender to me, and what you're framing as psychological relief feels like a dangerous anesthetic. Yes, guilt is corrosive. Yes, the should-haves are torture. But your solution isn't freedom. It's abdication. You're not dissolving guilt. You're dissolving agency. And those are not the same thing. Here's what terrifies me about this framework. It doesn't just eliminate guilt for past mistakes. It eliminates the urgent, precious responsibility we have for the choices we're making right now. This moment, this actual, unrepeatable moment where we still have time to call our mother, to repair that relationship, to try harder, to be kinder. You say, the marijuana plant doesn't blame itself for growing towards the sunlight. But we're not marijuana plants. We have this extraordinary, terrible gift of consciousness that includes the capacity to recognize our failures and correct our course, to learn, to grow differently than we grew yesterday. And you want to trade that for the peace of a predetermined river. That's not liberation. That's the comfort of powerlessness. And this idea that we need a predetermined hell to appreciate eternal paradise afterwards, that framework only makes sense if you've already decided that this life doesn't really count. It's practice. It's contrast. It's the nightmare before the real existence begins. But what if this is the real existence? What if these 70 or 80 years are not a temporary inconvenience before eternal joy, but the only chance we get to experience anything at all? Then every moment of guilt you dissolve through predetermination isn't freedom. It's waste. Because guilt, when it's not pathological, is information. It's your consciousness telling you that you value something you're not living up to, and that you still have time to change. The anxiety about making the right choice isn't always paralytic poison. Sometimes it's the engine that drives us to actually make meaningful choices while we still can. Your framework offers peace, yes, but it's the peace of giving up. The peace of saying, I was always going to fail my mother, hurt that person, waste that opportunity, so I can stop carrying the weight of trying to do better. And maybe that brings psychological relief in the short term. But what does it cost? It costs the urgent recognition that we are running out of time, that these choices matter now, that there is no cosmic do-over waiting for us. I understand the appeal of what you're offering. I really do. The idea that all our failures were inevitable, that we'll get eternal paradise as compensation, that we can stop the exhausting work of trying to be better. It's seductive, but it only works if you're willing to treat this singular, precious, finite existence as a disposable prelude to something else. And I'm not willing to do that because I'm genuinely frightened that this is all we get, and that every moment we spend comforting ourselves with predetermination is a moment we're not spending on the urgent, terrifying work of living as fully and responsibly as we can while we still have the chance.
I say you're making my exact point, and you don't even see it. You think you're defending agency. You're not. You're defending the illusion of agency. And that illusion is what's killing you. This moment, this actual unrepeatable moment where we still have time to call our mother. But will you call her? Not, could you theoretically call her, but will you, motherfucker? Because if predetermination is true, that question is already answered. You either will or you won't. And your sense that you're choosing in this moment is just consciousness, experiencing the unfolding of what was always going to happen. And here's the thing that eviscerates your argument. You're going to do exactly what you're going to do, either way. Whether you believe in free will or predetermination, your mother gets the same phone call or the same silence. The relationship gets repaired or it doesn't. You try harder or you don't. The outcome is identical. The only difference is whether you torture yourself about it afterwards. You call that information. I call it suffering with no function. You said guilt when it's not pathological, is information. Wrong. Guilt about the past is always pathological. You're confusing guilt with learning. You can learn from past actions without guilt. You can recognize that action caused harm, and I don't want to repeat it. Without the self-flagellation of I should have known better. I'm terrible, and I failed. The former is functional. The latter is psychological poison, dressed up as virtue. And this fear-mongering about surrender and abdication. Listen to yourself. You're equating predetermination with inaction, like believing you're predetermined suddenly makes you a passive lump or a catatonic blob. But that's not how it works. The predetermined you still acts, still chooses, within the deterministic flow, still experiences urgency and care and effort. The difference is, you're not also carrying the crushing weight of infinite phantom alternatives. I'm not saying give up trying, because it's all predetermined. I'm saying you're going to try exactly as hard as you're going to try, exactly as you were predetermined to do, and beating yourself up about whether you could have tried harder is fucking pointless suffering. And your fear about this being all we get, that's exactly the terror I'm offering relief from. Because if this is all we get, if it's only 70 years and then oblivion, then existence is fundamentally and unequivocally absurd. It's conscious beings grinding through decades of suffering for absolutely no purpose, ending in annihilation. That's not noble. That's not precious. That's horror. But you've dressed it up as urgent responsibility and meaningful choices because the alternative, that it might all be meaningless, is too terrifying to face. And yet, I'm offering the opposite. This predetermined hell matters because it's the contrast that makes eternal paradise appreciable. Your suffering has purpose. Your story has structure. And the urgency you feel, you'll feel it anyway, because that's part of the predetermined unfolding. You don't have to give up anything. You just have to stop punishing yourself for a freedom you never had.
You're right that I'll do what I'm going to do either way, but you're devastatingly wrong about what that means. Yes, whether I believe in free will or predetermination, the phone call happens or it doesn't. But the experience of making that call, the felt reality of choosing it, the conscious weight of deciding to reach out instead of letting another day pass, that's not just window dressing on a predetermined outcome. That is the outcome. The experience of agency, even if it's illusory, is part of what makes us human. And you want me to anesthetize it because it comes with pain. And you're doing this sleight of hand where you say, you'll feel urgency anyway, while simultaneously arguing that I should stop treating my choices as if they matter in the way urgency requires them to matter. You can't have it both ways. Either the urgency is real, meaning I genuinely could fail my mother, could waste this life, could make terrible choices that I'll run out of time to repair, or it's all theatre, a predetermined script I'm experiencing as urgent, while you, with your cosmic perspective, no, it's all been written already. And that difference matters because of what it does to how I live right now. If I truly absorb your framework, if I really believe that every failure was inevitable and that I'm headed for eternal paradise anyway, then why would I feel genuine urgency about anything? Why would I push through the hard, exhausting work of trying to repair what I've broken? Of being better than I was yesterday? Of fighting against my worst impulses? If it's all predetermined, and it's all temporary, and it all works out in eternal bliss anyway? You say I'm confusing guilt with learning, but you're the one who's confused, asshole! You think you can have learning without the sting of recognizing you did wrong! You think you can have growth without the painful acknowledgement that you could have been better and weren't. But that's not how human consciousness works. The recognition that I caused harm and I don't want to repeat it is a form of guilt. It's It's the functional form, the form that drives change. And your framework doesn't distinguish between pathological self-flagellation and productive remorse. It dissolves both, because both depend on the belief that you could have chosen differently. And this idea that existence without your framework is absurd and horror. Do you hear yourself? You're so terrified of meaninglessness that you've constructed an elaborate metaphysical safety net. And now you're trying to convince me that facing existence without that net is the real cowardice. But I think it's exactly the opposite. I think facing the possibility that this is all we get, that our 70 years matter desperately because they're all we have, that our choices are precious and unrepeatable and genuinely ours. That takes more courage than retreating into a vanilla and patchouli cosmic story where this life is just the prologue. You offer relief from the terror that it might all be meaningless, but your relief requires me to treat this life as if it's not my only life. It's a predetermined nightmare, a temporary contrast mechanism, a scene in a story I wrote in heaven, reality, paradise. And maybe that brings you peace, but it fills me with a different kind of terror, the terror of sleepwalking through the only existence I'll ever have, comforted by a story that lets me off the hook for the urgent, painful, precious responsibility of living fully while I still can. Because here's what I can't get past. If you're wrong, if there's no paradise waiting, if this predetermined hell is actually just our one finite life that we've decided to experience, as if our choices don't really count, then we've wasted it. We've traded the fierce urgency of mortality for the comfort of a cosmic participation trophy. And by the time we realize there's no eternal paradise coming to make it all worthwhile, it'll be too late to get back the years we spent believing our failures didn't really matter because they were always going to happen anyway. That's the gamble you're asking me to take, and I'm not willing to take it because I'm genuinely, desperately afraid that this fragile, painful, temporary existence is the only one I'll ever have, and I cannot afford to treat it as disposable.
You're still not getting it. You think you're afraid of wasting your life. You're not. You're addicted to the fear itself. Listen to what you're actually saying. I need to believe my choices genuinely matter, because otherwise I won't feel urgency. And without urgency, I won't try. And without trying, I'll waste everything. That's not courage. That's existential blackmail. You're holding a gun to your own head, called meaninglessness, and saying, I have to keep believing this, or I'll pull the trigger. You've made fear your fuel, and now you're defending the need to stay afraid because you can't imagine functioning without it. But here's what you're missing, and it's everything. I'm not asking you to stop trying. I'm asking you to stop suffering about trying. You will call your mother, or you won't. You will repair that relationship, or you won't. You will push through the hard work, or you won't. And none of that, none of it, changes based on whether you believe you could have done otherwise. The urgency you feel, it's real. It's part of the predetermined experience. You're not choosing to feel it. You're experiencing it unfolding. And that experience drives action just as effectively, whether you torture yourself with phantom alternatives or not. You keep saying, if I truly absorb predetermination, I'll stop trying. Prove it. Show me one person who genuinely integrated deterministic understanding and turned into a passive lump of shit. You can't, because it doesn't work that way. Human beings are action machines. We don't need the illusion of libertarian free will to function. We just need to be ourselves, unfolding as we're going to unfold. And this thing about guilt and learning, you're completely confused. I caused harm and I don't want to repeat it does not equal I should have known better, and I'm terrible for not knowing it. The first is recognition. The second is self-punishment. And you're defending the second because you think it's the engine of the first. But it's not. Motherfucker, it's just extra suffering you've been taught to mistake for virtue. I can learn from every mistake without 1 second of guilt. I can recognize harm and adjust my behavior and grow and evolve, and all without the psychological poison of I could have or should have chosen differently. And your terror about wasting this life if there's no home state of awareness, no heaven, no paradise? That terror is the waste, you quivering wanker! You're so busy being afraid you're wasting your life that you're actually wasting your life being afraid. Every moment you spend in that fear is a moment not spent actually living. You're like someone at a feast who can't taste the food because they're too busy panicking about whether there'll be any motherfucking dessert. But here's the real kicker. The thing that exposes your whole argument. You're already gambling. You're just betting on the worst outcome. You're betting that this is all there is, that suffering is meaningless, that consciousness is an accident that ends in oblivion, and that your mother's love, and your failures, and your desperate attempts to be better all dissolve into nothing. And you call that courage? That's not courage. That's despair dressed up as responsibility. I'm offering the opposite bet. This suffering has purpose. This struggle means something. The contrast serves eternal joy. Your consciousness doesn't end in annihilation. It reawakens at home. And if I'm wrong, if there is no eternal paradise, no eternal home, then I spent my life with less suffering, less guilt, less existential terror, and I end in the same oblivion you're already betting on anyway. But if you're wrong, if predetermination is true and paradise is real, then you spent your entire existence torturing yourself with a freedom you never had, drowning in unnecessary guilt, living in terror of meaninglessness, and all while heading toward the exact same eternal paradise I believed in all along. Your gamble doesn't minimize risk, it maximizes suffering. And you call that living fully. I call it dying slowly, while convinced you're being brave. Fuck that! And fuck you!
I mean, this is some bad weed.
You got it on you?
I got it on me, man. You got to check it out. It'll boogie-woogie on your brain.
All right.
Just 'cause we tight, I'm gonna let you have it for a double dime.